Live from New Delhi, you're watching the India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Coming up in the next hour. US Senate inching towards key vote on Trump's spending proposal amid Republican rift over cuts. 2 firefighters shot dead with a high-powered rifle after responding to a brush fire in Idaho, US. Suspect found dead. Area continues to report active wildfire. Rain wreaks havoc in many parts as monsoon grips India. Met Department issues alerts in northern regions. Southern Europe under intense heat wave alert as mercury soar past 40 degrees Celsius in Spain. World leaders gather in once-a-decade United Nations Development Financing Summit aims to curb global poverty, disease and the worst-case threats of climate change. All right, news in detail. US President Donald Trump's big beautiful bill has passed a key Senate vote. On Monday, senators are scheduled to start voting on a list of amendments to the bill. Here's a report on the details of the weekend sessions held on the same.
US is debating the big beautiful bill. The Senate Republicans are moving forward on President Donald Trump's sweeping tax cut and spending bill. In a marathon weekend session, the Senate advanced the bill with numerous amendments before final passage. It will then be returned to the Republicans in the House of Representatives for final passage before Trump can sign it into law. The Congressional Budget Office has estimated that the bill would add $3.3 trillion from 2025 to 2034. This adds $800 billion to the bill passed last month by the House of Representatives. Republicans have rejected the CBO's method to calculate the cost of legislation, whereas the Democrats argued that the bill favors the wealthy and risks social programs.
Republicans are about to pass the single most expensive bill in U.S. history to give tax breaks to billionaires while taking away Medicaid, SNAP benefits, and good-paying jobs for millions of people. CBO just this morning said it will explode the debt by $3.3 trillion. And they said it will likely cost more over time. More than that, closer to $4 trillion. Rather than be honest with the American people about the true costs of their billionaire giveaways, Republicans are doing something the Senate has never done before, deploying fake math and accounting gimmicks to hide the true cost of their bill. Look, Republicans can use whatever budgetary gimmicks they want to try and make the math work on paper, but you can't paper over the real-life consequences of adding tens of trillions to the debt.
In a 51-49 vote to the bill, the Senate only narrowly advanced the tax cut, immigration, border, and military spending bill on Saturday. Taking to social media, Trump hailed the vote as a great victory for his great, big, beautiful bill. Senate bill has incorporated many changes to the one passed by the House. The Senate version of the bill makes permanent an array of tax cuts that the House version would have allowed to expire in a few years. The Senate version raises to $40,000 the maximum deduction for state and local tax payments with annual inflation adjustments. That deduction will revert to its current $10,000 level after 2029. In the federal income tax deduction, the Senate bill would provide $6,000 per year for people over 65, whereas the earlier House version would have offered a $4,000 deduction. Both would end after 2028. The Senate bill would roll back clean energy incentives created by President Joe Biden's 2022 Inflation Reduction Act and would also propose a new tax on these projects if they cannot prove their products are made without Chinese parts, as well as a new tax break for coal production. The Senate version of the bill on Medicaid would clamp down on provider taxes and delay the implementation of these changes until 2028. The Senate also included an extra $25 billion for rural hospitals. The Senate bill would raise the nation's debt ceiling by $5 trillion, but the House version had called for a $4 trillion increase. Both the House and Senate initially included a provision that would have allowed the U.S. to impose new taxes on residents, businesses, and other entities from countries that are found to impose unfair foreign taxes. If the Senate passes the bill, it will then return to the House of Representatives for final passage before Trump can sign it into law. Bureau Report, DD India.
Shifting focus, a strange incident was reported from the northwestern U.S. state of Idaho, where a gunman ambushed and shot dead 2 firefighters responding to a forest fire. The motive for the shooting was not known, and police did not provide any details on the suspect, saying officers were still working to identify the slain man. The suspect was found using cell phone location information, and his body was removed by a SWAT team as the fire approached.
We had a cell phone activation that was in the same spot since about 3:16, and that it was in the same area, and we honed in on that cell phone, and we saw that there was a male, appeared to be deceased, with a weapon nearby. So we have currently one dead shooter. Based on the preliminary investigation that was being conducted.
And the brush fire is still burning in the city of around 56,000 people, which is near the border with Washington state. Moving further, U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday said he was not speaking to Iran and was not offering the country anything, reiterating his assertion that the United States had totally obliterated Tehran's nuclear facilities. Trump on Friday dismissed media reports that said his administration had discussed possibly helping Iran access as much as $30 billion to build a civilian energy-producing nuclear program. Iran and the U.S. have held indirect talks since April, focusing on finding a new diplomatic solution regarding Iran's nuclear program. Tehran says its program is peaceful, and Washington says it wants to ensure Iran cannot build a nuclear weapon. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel's 12-day war with Iran ending June 24 opened opportunities to free 50 hostages held by Hamas in Gaza since October 7, 2023. Israeli military chief Eyal Zamir suggested the Iran conflict could advance objectives against Hamas. Netanyahu prioritized hostage release as per the Hostages and Missing Families Forum. U.S. proposed ceasefire talks continue. However, Hamas demands a full Israeli withdrawal, while Israel insists on dismantling Hamas. And Israel's Netanyahu on Sunday spoke to Israel's Shin Bet intelligence service alongside its new temporary head following Ronen Bar's June 15 resignation amid government efforts to remove him. Netanyahu hailed the elimination of 2 deadly threats to Israel's survival, referring to the recent 12-day war with Iran.
I want to inform you that many opportunities have now opened up, as you surely know, following this victory. First and foremost, to rescue the hostages. Of course, we will also need to resolve the issue of Gaza to defeat Hamas, but I believe we will achieve both missions. Beyond that, broad regional opportunities are opening up, in most of which, almost all, you are partners.
Now, the Jerusalem District Court cancelled Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's corruption trial hearings this week, accepting his request citing classified diplomatic and security grounds. Netanyahu, indicted in 2019 for bribery, fraud and breach of trust, denies the charges, calling them a left-wing witch hunt. Trump claimed a Gaza ceasefire is near, though details remain unclear. The ruling aligns with heightened efforts to resolve the Gaza conflict post-Iran war. The decision followed U.S. President Donald Trump's social media post suggesting the trial could hinder Netanyahu's negotiations with Hamas and Iran. And U.S. President Donald Trump criticized Israeli prosecutors over Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's corruption trial, calling it insanity that hampers talks with Hamas and Iran. US President Trump lashed out at prosecutors in Israel, saying Washington, having given billions of dollars worth of aid to Israel, was not going to stand for this. Netanyahu reposted Trump's Truth Social post thanking him. Trump claimed a Gaza ceasefire is near, though details are scarce amid heightened focus post US-Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. Updates now on Russia-Ukraine conflict. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has stated that the pace of talks to resolve the conflict in Ukraine depends on Kiev's position, the effectiveness of US mediation and the situation on the ground. While Trump, who has pushed both sides towards ceasefire talks since his January inauguration, said on Friday he thinks something will happen, quote-unquote, about a settlement of the war. Peskov did not elaborate on what Moscow expects from Washington or Kiev. Moscow has been demanding that Ukraine cede more land and abandon Western military support, conditions Kiev calls unacceptable. Although a date for the next round of talks hasn't been confirmed, but Russia hopes for the clarity soon. And German Foreign Minister Johann Waidpul on Monday arrived in Kiev, underlining Germany's continued support for Ukraine. The visit comes a day after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called for help from Washington and Western allies to bolster Ukraine's air defenses after a Russian strike on Sunday. The strike involved hundreds of drones, cruise and ballistic missiles. Germany is Ukraine's second biggest military backer after the United States. That adds pressure on Europe.
Ich möchte unterstreichen, dass
I would like to emphasize the German government continued commitment to Ukraine. The country is currently being hit by terrible attacks. Putin is obviously using the focus on the Middle East to continue his war here, which continues to violate international law. We must not allow him to do that.
der nach wie vor völkerrechtlich
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has signed a decree on the country's withdrawal from the Ottawa Convention, which bans the production and use of anti-personnel mines. The presidential website. In a video message, Zelensky emphasized that Russia was never a member of the convention, not even during its conflict with Ukraine. A senior Ukrainian lawmaker said that parliamentary approval is still needed to withdraw from the treaty. Ukraine ratified the convention in 2005. We are slipping into a very short break, but still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is set to visit the United States at the invitation of U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio to attend Quad Foreign Ministers meeting in Washington. Jury begins deliberations in Erin Patterson mushroom triple murder trial. Verdict likely today.
Goa, a food paradise, both steeped in historical culinary tradition and at the forefront of a modern-day food revolution that is fresher, more local and more global than ever before. I'm embarking on a journey across the state to explore the very best of food here.
This is honestly my favorite way to eat an egg.
Break bread with some of Goa's most loved chefs and understand what food really means to communities here. Watch Postcards from Goa on National Geographic.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Some more stories. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is set to visit the United States from June 30th to July 2nd at the invitation of U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. During the visit, Dr. Jaishankar will participate in the next edition of the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting scheduled for 1st July in Washington, D.C. The Quad Foreign Ministers will continue discussions from their last meeting held in Washington, D.C. on 21st January 2025. They will exchange views on regional and global developments, particularly those concerning the Indo-Pacific, and review the progress made on various Quad initiatives in the run-up to the Quad Leaders Summit, which will be hosted by India. The ministers are also expected to deliberate on new proposals aimed at advancing the shared vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific. The minister will also travel to New York on June 30th to inaugurate an exhibition titled The Human Cost of Terrorism at the United Nations headquarters. The exhibition will highlight the devastating toll of heinous terrorist acts around the world and the steps taken by the international community to combat terrorism. All right, to talk more on this, we are joined by DD India's Jessica Taneja from the newsroom. Jessica, tell us, what are India's key strategic priorities going into this Quad Foreign Ministers meeting in Washington?
As you recall, Abhishek, back in January when Foreign Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar was in DC, he met with Marco Rubio. In fact, that was Marco Rubio's first engagement with any other foreign country heads or leaders or his counterparts. It was certainly a moment to identify it as an important and significant development back in that time. And you'd also recalled that External Affairs Minister had attended Donald Trump's presidential inauguration as well. So we know the kind of importance that both United States along with India put into this relationship when it comes to the Quad, which also includes the likes of Australia and Japan, which have been our partners in the Indo-Pacific. The focus of Quad ever since its inception has been on the Indo-Pacific, specifically on how to have a free and open Indo-Pacific wherein all these countries come together on various economic initiatives which also lead to health initiatives. So there have been a lot of campaigns as well as programs that have been designed under the Quad initiative undertaken by not just the foreign ministers of these countries but also to the leaders level. And it was in fact Donald Trump who had revived the Quad, or in a sense given it a bit more concrete force when it comes to putting it out on the leaders level. That's the first time they ever met. So the Trump administration has time and again given much emphasis to the Quad summit with like-minded partners in the Indo-Pacific to continue with their initiatives, whether it be a vaccine or during the pandemic, or free and resilient supply chains, to even maritime security and surveillance. All these nations have in the past worked together, and these initiatives is what they will likely to continue to mull over.
Okay, Jessica, also, are there any bilaterals or engagements planned during the New York leg of the visit where he will inaugurate an exhibition?
Well, that's correct. An exhibition will be inaugurated. It is called The Human Cost of Terrorism. Pretty much in line with what India's message has been to the world when it comes to cross-border terrorism emanating from Pakistan, and India continues to highlight its point that it is in fact a country, its neighbor, that has been emanating terror at the cost of human lives, devastating at both ends, and India wants to make sure that Pakistan as a perpetrator of this cross-border terrorism is held accountable and is also questioned when it comes to harboring terrorists and their terrorist activities, including their bases which India struck during Operation Sindoor. So this is again India's intent to highlight the kind of activities that the Pakistani government continues, or in fact its military continues to indulge in, given the fact that it hasn't taken any measure to counter terrorism at all. And this entire Quad initiative also works together on many counter-terrorism operations as well, be it piracy on the seas in the Indian Ocean or the Pacific Ocean, or be it maritime and reconnaissance. So all these countries have worked together, and India's effort to highlight the fact that there is another country in the neighborhood that is not sticking to the rules and perhaps needs to align with what is counter-terrorism in the world.
All right, Jessica, thank you for the time being, but yes, we'll keep taking updates from you. Moving on, US President Donald Trump said in an interview broadcast on Sunday that he had found a buyer for TikTok short video app, which he described as a group of very wealthy people whose identities he will reveal in about 2 weeks. He said the deal he is developing would probably need China's approval to move forward, and he predicted Chinese President Xi Jinping would likely approve it. The US President earlier this month had extended to September 17 a deadline for China-based ByteDance to divest the US assets of TikTok, despite a law that mandated a sale or shutdown without significant progress.
No big deal. We have a buyer for TikTok, by the way. I think I'll need probably China approval. I think President Xi will probably do it.
All right, let's now take a look at timeline about the course of TikTok over the years. We'll start with 2020. During his previous tenure, Donald Trump orders the TikTok ban, citing the Chinese data risk. If you can have that on our screen. Yes, 2020, Trump orders TikTok ban, citing Chinese data risk. And after the order, U.S. courts blocked the ban directive. And next year, 2021, Biden revoked Trump's ban, reviews foreign apps for the security. In 2023, Biden banned TikTok on federal devices. DOJ probes spying claims. And then a year later, in 2024, in the month of April, Biden signed PAFACA, or Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Control Applications Act, mandates ByteDance divest TikTok by January 19, 2025. And then in December 2024, D.C. Circuit upheld PAFACA against TikTok's First Amendment challenge. And this year, in 2025, January, Supreme Court affirmed law. TikTok briefly offline on January 18. And then in the same month on January, Trump extended divestment deadline by 75 days. Then in April, Trump granted second extension to mid-June 2025. And a few days ago, on June 19, Trump extended deadline to September 17, 2025 for the third time. On June 29, Trump claimed a wealthy group to buy TikTok. And days after U.S. President Donald Trump called off trade talks, Canada has rescinded its digital services tax, targeting U.S. technology firms in a bid to advance trade negotiations with the U.S. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and Trump will resume trade negotiations in order to agree on a deal by July 21st. On Friday, Trump abruptly cut off trade talks with Canada over its tax targeting U.S. technology firms, saying that it was a blatant attack and that he would set a new tariff rate on Canadian goods within the next week. The tax was 3% of the digital services revenue a firm takes in from Canadian users above $20 million in a calendar year, and payments will be retroactive to 2022. And Canada is the second largest U.S. trading partner after Mexico and the largest buyer of U.S. exports. It bought $349.4 billion of U.S. goods last year and exported $412.7 billion to the U.S., according to U.S. Census Bureau data. Shifting focus, former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro drew hundreds of supporters to Sao Paulo's main avenue in a rally to drum up support ahead of a judicial case pending in the Supreme Court for coup charges. A trial over his involvement in an alleged coup plot to secure the presidency in 2022 elections is reaching its final stages in the Supreme Court. According to Brazilian media, testimonies and defendants have already declared, and it will now be the turn for the prosecutor's office to present its final allegations. During his speech, Bolsonaro mentioned his trip to the U.S. in December 2022 to George President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva's inauguration on January 1st, 2023 in Brasilia. The riots took place on January 8 at the same location. We can solve Brazil's problems. Let me repeat, give me 50% of the Chamber of Deputies and 50% of the Senate, and I will change Brazil's destiny.
First of all, justice for our innocent patriots who are imprisoned and our freedom, which is at serious risk as it is on the brink. So we are here fighting for justice and freedom above all.
In Colombia, the lower house has approved a pension reform backed by leftist President Gustavo Petro for the second time, following a constitutional court order to redo the vote due to procedural issues. The court's June ruling did not address the constitutionality of the bill, but mandated that the lower house revote on the version passed by the Senate, stating that the initial vote lacked sufficient debate. The bill was backed by 97 lawmakers on Saturday, while one voted against it. The bill, intended to take effect in July pending court approval, seeks to boost the Call Pensions Fund by requiring low-income earners to contribute and ensuring support for those lacking retirement savings. In Chile, voters turned out at polling stations in Chile in a primary election to choose President Gabriel Boric's successor on Sunday, who will run for the presidency from the left-wing coalition in the next presidential polls in November. Around 15.4 million voters were called to cast their votes for one of the four candidates, notably Boric's former Minister of Public Security, Carolina Toja, and his former Minister of Labour, Janet Jara. 8 leftist parties have converged in the Unity for Chile coalition to elect a representative that will run for the November 16 presidential election. The other two candidates are Boric's Broad Front candidate, Gonzalo Winter, and the Green Social Regionalist Federation's Jaime Pulet. The verdict in mushroom murder trial could come as early as today. The triple murder trial of Australian Erin Patterson revolves around an innocuous-looking mushroom with a slightly sweet smell and a sinister name. Patterson is accused of killing her husband's parents and aunt in 2023 by lacing their beef Wellington lunch with highly toxic death cap mushrooms. Though the 50-year-old has tenuously denied the charges, saying the hearty meal was contaminated by accident. This is the infographic explainer on death cap mushroom, the deadliest fungus known to humans. Eating even a small amount of this mushroom can kill a person. And jurors on Monday will begin deliberating whether Sean Diddy Combs parlayed his celebrity wealth and business empire into a decade-long criminal ring that saw him force women into drug-fueled sexual performances with escorts. Combs faces upwards of life in prison if convicted on 5 federal charges. On Friday, his lawyer vowed to skewer the credibility of his accusers, namely 2 women he dated for years, saying they were out for money, while rejecting any notion he led a criminal ring. But in their final argument, prosecutors tore into the defense, saying Combs' team had contorted the facts endlessly. Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. In the small town of Tatumbla, Honduras, just outside the capital Tegucigalpa, residents held a fun contest for the best dressed hen. Locals dressed up hens and roosters in creative costumes to celebrate their town's heritage. Tatumla's name comes from the indigenous Lanka language, meaning abundance of roosters and hens. The playful event brought together community pride, cultural roots, and a splash of feathered fashion. As Congo marks 65 years of independence, residents in the conflict-hit town of Oicha say that they still feel trapped by war and outside control. Despite a recent US-mediated peace deal, rebels backed by Rwanda hold major cities in the east. Locals feel true freedom remains out of reach, with foreign powers still managing Congo's resources. Many displaced families say peace, not ceremonies, will mark real independence. In Kaski, Nepal, the Asar Ropen festival brought locals and international tourists together to celebrate National Paddy Day. The event, aimed at promoting agri-tourism, featured traditional mud games like tug-of-war and rice planting. Visitors joined villagers in Pokhara's fields, turning the paddies into joyful gathering spots. With timely rainfall, farmers were also glad to begin planting early this year, adding to the cheerful mood of the festival. Still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman to attend 4th International Conference on Financing for Development in Spain. And we get your detailed analysis on climate crisis gripping the world.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Recap of our top stories. US Senate inching towards key vote on Trump's spending proposal amid Republican drift over cuts. Two firefighters shot dead with a high-powered rifle after responding to a brush fire in Idaho, US. Suspect found dead. Area continues to report active wildfire. Rain wreaks havoc in many parts as monsoon grips India. Met Department issues alerts in northern regions. Southern Europe under intense heat wave alert as mercury soar past 40 degrees Celsius in Spain. And world leaders gather in once a decade United Nations Development Financing Summit aims to curb global poverty, disease and the worst case threats of climate change. Weather updates now. Monsoon has officially arrived in Delhi with scattered rains and thunderstorms bringing the mercury down. Besides Delhi, the southwest monsoon also advanced into Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh and Haryana, covering the entire country 9 days ahead of its regular schedule of July 8th. The development brings much needed relief to several regions but also raises the risk of extreme weather events across many states. Here's more.
With the monsoon finally making its much-awaited foray into Delhi, as announced by the India Meteorological Department, June is set to end wetter and cooler than usual. According to IMD data, this is only the 10th occasion since 1960 when the monsoon covered the entire country in June, which is also the onset month. Amid the full-scale spread of monsoon, the IMD has issued red alerts and warnings for heavy to very heavy rainfall across various parts of the country in the coming days.
सारी जो मानसून की कंडीशंस है वो सेटिस्फाई हो गई। उसके साथ ही अभी एक लो प्रेशर एरिया बना हुआ है जो भी नॉर्थ वेस्ट बे में है। कल तक एक लो प्रेशर एरिया था, सौराष्ट्र कच्छ में था, तो उसके अलावा एक ईस्ट वेस्ट ट्रफ जोन बना हुआ है और ये सारी चीज़ें मानसून के लिए काफ़ी फेवरेबल हैं। इसी को मद्देनज़र के कारण होते हुए ये सब मानसून आज इंटायर कंट्री कवर हो चुका है, इंक्लूडिंग जो कुछ हिस्से हमारे राजस्थान के बचे थे, हरियाणा के बचे थे, उत्तर प्रदेश के बचे थे।
In the hill states of Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, the situation remains serious due to intense and continued rainfall. The IMD has issued a red alert for extremely heavy rainfall accompanied by thunderstorms across several Uttarakhand districts till 5th of July. Meanwhile, in Himachal Pradesh, the Beas River is in spate. Landslides, blocked roads and waterlogging have been reported in several areas. The 24-hour suspension of the Char Dham Yatra, issued on June 29th as a precautionary measure following heavy rain and adverse weather conditions in Uttarakhand, was lifted on Monday morning, though the state remains on alert for heavy rains in coming days. The IMD has also predicted widespread rainfall in northwest India over the coming days. Punjab, Haryana, Chandigarh, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and Jharkhand are likely to experience heavy rainfall activity until July 2nd. Furthermore, several districts of Gujarat have been issued an orange alert along the western coast. For northeast India, very heavy rainfall is likely to persist over Arunachal Pradesh, Assam and Meghalaya, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram and Tripura during July 2nd to 5th. There is a looming threat of major flooding in Odisha's Balasore and Mayurbhanj districts due to incessant rainfall. Rescue teams are on high alert in flood-prone areas to tackle potential flooding. The district administrations have initiated the process of evacuating people living in low-lying areas to safer locations. With the monsoon now active across all regions of India, the IMD has urged the public to remain cautious following safety guidelines issued by local administrations and avoid areas prone to landslides or flash floods. Commuters and residents in high-risk zones are advised to stay informed through official weather bulletins and alerts. Bureau Report, TD India.
All right, let's go across to Shimla in Himachal Pradesh, where DD India's Muskan Chaudhary joins us for more. Muskan, what is the latest you can tell us from there, from Himachal? Red alert has been issued in several districts.
Abhishek, see, the monsoon in Himachal already brings fear. And from the past 3 to 4 years, monsoon in Himachal has caused a very high damage. And looking towards this season, we have already seen the accident of flood in Kuhu and Dharamshala. And there was also a cloud report in Rampur last night. Although there were no casualties in that incident, but the MD has issued an alert to 4 districts, that is Agda, Mandi, Solan, and in these 4 states, the educational institutes have been closed. And administration are continuously advising
to the water bodies or the landslide prone areas. Also, in the latest update, the dams and the rivers are flowing over the capacity. In Sirmaur, the Chaton River, they have opened the 4th gate and the water has been released, and administration has advised the people who are living near the areas to evacuate the areas and to reach to the safer places. And looking at the weather conditions, the administration, the police and the LCRF at a high alert, and they are continuously advising and appealing to people, if they are traveling to the state, then please stay in contact with the administration and to look at the weather conditions before coming to the state.
All right, Muskan, we'll leave it at that. Thank you for getting us the latest on that story. Let's talk about what is happening globally now. Southern Europe is under an unrelenting heat dome with temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius in many places. The mercury is expected to rise further in the coming days. Fires have also broken out in France and Turkey, while Spain, Portugal and Italy have been placed on heat wave alert.
Southern Europe is experiencing severe wildfires amid a heat wave that has been intensifying across the region. Almost entire France seems to be reeling. Wildfires have spread across the southwest part of the nation, prompting precautionary evacuations. French Weather Service has also issued an orange heatwave alert for 84 out of France's 101 regional departments for Monday. Further south, in Turkey, forest fires broke out on Sunday afternoon in the western Izmir province, fed by strong winds. Firefighters, backed by specially adapted planes, were battling the blaze, but 5 neighborhoods in the Seferi-Hisar district had to be evacuated. Spain, Italy, Greece, Portugal and the UK are also experiencing extreme temperatures. As Spain's Seville hosts United Nations' 4th International Conference on Financing for Development on Monday, the temperatures have soared to 48 degrees Celsius. Spain's National Weather Agency has also issued orange alert indicating high risk. In Italy, 21 cities were on high alert for extreme heat. Hospital emergency departments across the nations have reported a 10% increase in heat stroke cases. Several areas in the southern half of Portugal, including Lisbon, are also under a red warning until Monday. Meanwhile, in London, temperatures have risen above 30 degrees Celsius, a figure that is about 10 degrees above the average. According to the scientists, climate change is a major reason for intense heat wave, particularly in the cities where the so-called urban heat island effect amplifies temperatures among tightly packed buildings. Experts have also warned of biodiversity being heavily impacted as a result of worsening climate change situation. Bureau Report, DD India.
And the world leaders, CEOs and top officials from international bodies gathered in Sevilla, Spain on Monday for the first plenary meetings of the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development. The UN Development Meet in Sevilla aims to shape the future of global development finance for the next decade. High on the agenda are climate financing, global debt reform and ways to channel both public and private capital to bridge deep-rooted inequalities. Spain's government says the summit could redefine efforts towards sustainable development and economic justice. Even as Europe battles blistering heat waves, with Spain hitting a record 48 degrees Celsius this June, delegates at the UN-backed meet in Sevilla say their mission is clear: to find ways to support countries already reeling from climate change and to push for a fairer global response. Take a listen.
The Heat is incredible, no doubt about it, and we're navigating it. We've been in a lot of indoor spaces, and it's unfortunate that climate change is what it is. I don't think they anticipated it to be this hot this year, but we're here for an important mission, which is about how do we ensure that we are supporting countries that are also affected by climate change.
Meanwhile, people from several social organizations staged protests in Serbia to call for climate justice and a changed approach in the climate financing between the global north and the global south. Protesters also demanded debt cancellation and taxing the super rich. The four-day meeting in Serbia promises to take on climate change by mapping out the global framework for development, but the United States' decision to pull out and wealthy countries' shrinking appetite for foreign aid has dampened hopes that the summit will bring about significant change. As global leaders gather in Serbia for the UN Development Meet, India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is leading the Indian delegation. During her visit, Finance Minister will deliver a keynote address at the International Business Forum Leadership Summit in Serbia. She is also set to hold bilateral talks on the sidelines with senior ministers from Germany, Peru and New Zealand, as well as the President of the European Investment Bank, aiming to strengthen India's economic partnerships and push for inclusive growth. All right, to talk more on climate crisis the world is facing, we are joined by Professor P.K. Joshi, who is environmental scientist. Welcome, sir. Welcome to DD India. Appreciate you giving us your precious time. The world is experiencing a climate crisis, global temperatures, increased frequency and intensity of extreme weather events. And there's a conference also going on at Sevilla in Spain, which focuses primarily on reforms to help poor nations adapt to the climate crisis. Sir, tell us, how would you assess the current state of climate change globally, and what are the most visible signs we are seeing today?
Well, thank you very much, Abhishek, for having me here. And coming to the question, now what we understand, climate change has actually been accepted across the globe. And given the kind of experiences which are coming from Europe, not just this year, for past couple of years, the heat stresses which are being reported, it means the developed countries which were at times, they were not taking care of climate change as a most important global agenda. They are experiencing and facing similar kind of experiences nowadays. The casualties have actually gone very high. Last year, there is an order of $300 billion which was invested just to handle the heat. And this year, now, when you were reading the news, Greece, or you talk about Spain, Italy, Portugal, they all are, stressed with heat. They are expecting wildfires, and they have come across various kind of measurements to check or to stop the forest fire or wildfire kind of things. Particularly Italy, out of 21 out of 27 places where they have reported meteorologically the kind of heat stress which is there, they have banned the outdoor work. That is the gravity through which climate change is being seen. At the same time, when it comes to negotiations, discussions and all, climate finance has become a biggest challenge. And now the way, U.S. is treating climate change negotiations, rather it has pulled itself from, this negotiations. Conference. It has actually become a big challenge, but there is a ray of hope when you specifically look at United Nations Secretariat and the, promises which are coming from the global south. Though we do understand there is a clear-cut divide between North and South when it comes to understanding or addressing climate change. But somewhere the South has emerged as one of the promising set of states which is addressing the issue of climate finance. And I'm very strongly, I feel that as we saw in Baku, now in Brazil, people will be taking climate finance as the most important agenda.
And also, Professor Joshi, since we spoke about the conference in Sevilla, what are the biggest climate-related challenges that underdeveloped nations or the poorer nations face today compared to the wealthier countries?
Well, you will always be able to appreciate that within the underdeveloping countries or non-developed countries, there is always a marginal population. And when you look at the hazards or disasters which are as a result of climate change, this marginal population is affected the most. So it means a fair amount of people who are residing in underdeveloped or developing countries, they are facing such type of challenges. And most of the small island countries or the countries which have a larger coastal areas, they basically account for such a set of, developing countries. So given the, rise in temperature and the sea level rise, they have much larger challenges. At the same time, what we get to understand is among these countries, the gender imbalance, wherein women-led resource dependence is very high, or indigenous communities are highly dependent on resources. They have a lot of outdoor activities to be carried out. So they are actually facing the larger challenges out of the climate change which is happening, whether it is rise in temperature or erratic rainfalls or the hazards or disasters which are coming because of such kind of things. So at times we get to see from a global discourses, there is a lack of accountability of such population. And we need these kind of things to come in the main frame of discussions and negotiations.
Professor Joshi, also very quickly, what progress have we made globally in tackling the climate crisis? Also, are we on track to meet international climate targets like the Paris Agreement?
Well, the answer is yes and no. And yes is because many of the countries, and I should very proudly say India has played a very crucial role when it comes to Solar Alliance, when it is coming to CDRI, whether it is coming to biodiversity major monitoring and assessments. So, there are countries like India and few of the European countries which have actually come up with good quality of NDCs. And when we look at their commitments in renewable energy and all, so those things are actually progressing very well. And I find it very optimistic if, we get a leadership as India has shown in some, at least few of the other nations. Definitely things are very positive. But when I say no, I really feel very sorry about the climate finance. It is the responsibility of the developed world or the rich countries. Their energy footprint is very high in the sense they contribute a lot when it comes to US or including some of the European countries and China towards the greenhouse emissions or the rise in temperature. But the kind of commitments which should come through them in terms of action or in terms of course correction, that is something missing. So that demotivates many of us that, the course correction is not actually in the path of progress. And this is nothing very new. We are seeing it since the Paris Agreement. Time and again, we are just blocked by the finance, climate finance, transfer of technologies. So therein, the role of developed countries is very much needed, or the rich countries is very much
positive things are being done, but yes, like you said, we need to do a lot more. We'll leave it at that. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you very much.
Moving on, India's Minister for Cooperation, Amit Shah, chaired the Manthan Baitak, a meeting of cooperation ministers from all states and union territories at Bharat Mandapam in New Delhi. The session focused on strengthening cooperative sectors across the country and fostering collaboration between the centre and states to drive grassroots development. Business updates now. Global markets kicked off the week on a positive note, with Wall Street futures edging higher. S&P 500 futures rose 0.3% and Nasdaq 100 futures added 0.4%, while Dow futures jumped for 32 points. In Europe, the Euro Stoxx 50 was up 0.3%. Germany's DAX futures gained 0.4%, but UK's FTSE futures remained flat. Asian markets also mirror the upbeat mood. Japan's Nikkei climbed 1.0% and South Korea's Kospi advanced 0.7%. Meanwhile, in India, indices lagged behind. The Sensex slipped 473 points to 83,585, while the Nifty fell 137 points to 25,500 in midday trade. Moving further, a minimum wage of 15 euros an hour. That's what Social Democrats in Germany ran on in the last elections. They didn't win, but they are part of the government as a junior partner. And now Berlin reached a decision with regards to the minimum wage. Lars Holter is with DW and joins me from Berlin. Lars, good to have you. What more can you tell us?
Thanks for having me. So the minimum wage is indeed going up, but we're not getting to that level of 15 euros that the Social Democrats had been talking about during the campaign. Still, from the current 12.60, the minimum wage will go up to 13.90 euro next year, and then to 14.60 in 2027. Now that would be a raise of 15% over 2 years. That's not bad, and it's definitely way above current inflation rates. And I'm saying this at a time when we had relatively high inflation in Germany, with higher energy costs making all kinds of products more expensive, including, of course, groceries, as farmers have been struggling too. Anyway, back to that minimum wage. For many at the bottom rung of the economic ladder, life had gotten very expensive. And with 15% more, their pain will ease for sure, even though many had, of course, been hoping for the full 15 euros as had been talked about, especially since many economists had been saying that that amount would have been feasible given the current economic environment.
And also, Lars, who made the decision now on the minimum wage, and how did they arrive at these final numbers?
So we have an independent commission in place comprising economists representing the employers as well as the workers' side. And there is indeed no political influence at all. Well, at least not officially. One of the economists on the panel actually just said that he's glad the decision is out now. He said there was so much influence peddling and that he was barely able to leave the house without running into someone who tried to nudge him one way or the other. I hope he was kidding a bit. Anyway, the commission obviously looked at the needs of low-income earners who urgently needed a break and a chance to catch up with inflation. But they also looked at employers who worried that their products and services might go up in price and that they might indeed lose customers over it, all the way to them potentially cutting back on jobs, which again would have been detrimental to the well-being of those on the low-income spectrum. There were hairdressers, restaurant owners, caregivers, many who are often paying minimum wage, and they were indeed worried that too big a raise would present huge problems to them and potentially damage their business.
All right, thank you for all the information, Lars Holter. In sports, India's shuttler Ayush Shetty clinched the US Open Badminton Championships title with a commanding straight games win over Brian Yang of Canada in the men's singles final. The 20-year-old defeated Yang 21-18, 21-13 to cap off an impressive week. It was Shetty's maiden BWF World Tour trophy. Ayush also became the first Indian shuttler to win a tournament this season, ending the nation's wait for a men's singles crown away from home since Lakshya Sen's triumph at the Canada Open in 2023. In women's singles final, Tanvi Sharma finished runner-up after she went down fighting against top seed Bevin Zhang of the United States. Playing her first World Tour final, the 16-year-old lost 11-21, 21-16, 10-21. And the Sports Authority of India, Netaji Subhash Southern Centre in Bengaluru, is scripting a glorious chapter. The complex, which is spread over 80 acres, has become go-to venue for athletes seeking world-class facilities. Watch this special report by DD India's Sushil Kumar. During the last few years, the Indian athletes have brought laurels to the country in the form of medals. This has been possible by infrastructure push by the government. The Sports Authority of India, Netaji Subhash Southern Centre, Bengaluru, which comes under the Union Sports Ministry, has played a vital role. Equipped with world-class sports facilities, SAI NSSC Bengaluru has undergone a sea change in the last decade. With a cumulative investment of more than 140 crore Indian rupees, this has become the best in the country and one of the best sports training centers in the world. The players also lauded the training facilities at the complex.
Lot of improvement has been there, and I've heard that there will be much more improvement coming forward. So I think sirf main nahi, but also hockey players, Olympic medalists have been here. They've been training here.
In the last decade, many facilities have been added, which includes 300-bed modern hostels for boys and 330-bed modern hostels for girls. Also, changing rooms for male and female hockey players, state-of-the-art hypoxic chambers, smart synthetic tracks, hockey turf and a multi-purpose indoor hall which have been constructed at a cost of more than 70 crore rupees.
Facilities main infrastructure और recovery हम देखेगा तो अभी साई सेंटर्स में बूथ हम आगे चुके हुए क्योंकि मैं ज़्यादा इंटरनेशनल कंपटीशन गया है ऑलरेडी यूरोप अमेरिका में ज़्यादा वर्ल्ड क्लास सेंटर में गया कि ट्रेनिंग के लिए और कंपटीशन के लिए जो उधर का सेम इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर और सेम फैसिलिटीज हमको इधर ही मिल रहा है.
With an aim to train excellent athletes in the country, the Sports Authority of India introduced the National Centre of Excellence model in 2019, which developed an advanced and high-level training mechanism for the players. It includes state-of-the-art sports facilities for the players, scientifically designed coaching modules with qualified coaches. Every type of facility has been provided to the athletes, which includes world-class sports equipment, chefs, coaches, sports science and medical support, including physiotherapy, psychology, biomechanics, biochemistry and sports medicine services. Recovery and rehabilitation facilities including hydrotherapy, sauna, steam and modern treatment units, all managed by skilled professionals to help players recover fast in case of injury, reduce the risk of injury and improve the health of the athletes. SAI NSSC Bengaluru has also showed its concern for environment, with the athletes taking major green initiatives such as installation of a sewage treatment plant, energy efficient overhead water tank, solar water heaters and over 5,000 trees planted across the campus, contributing to a clean, green and safe environment.
This is New India, the sporting country, and SAI Bengaluru is providing world-class sports infrastructure to uplift sports in the country. With cameraman Pramod Negi, I am Sushil Kumar, DD News, Bangalore.
That's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile application. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek Mahajan from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.